All right. Positive body language. Video we just watched, Federer and Murray from a few years ago. What were your observations? It was a long game. Murray held after being deuce, add, set point to Federer, etc.
Murray was raging a lot.
What do you mean he was raging a lot? Actually, no, he wasn't. He had a couple of moments where he was very animated, but generally, Murray was pretty positive.
He smacked the racket.
He did smack the racket one time, right? But Murray's character versus Federer generally is pretty vocal anyway. But in terms of the quality of the tennis and what it meant, he was trying to avoid going 2 sets to love down against Federer at Wimbledon. Most people that lose the first 2 sets against Federer at Wimbledon don't recover, right? So that's how big this moment was. So first of all, he went love 40 down, didn't react, worked his way back to deuce, and then obviously it went backwards and forwards with Murray having game points, Federer having set points. It's a pretty long game. I think it was about 12 minutes, 13 minutes in total, which is long for a service game on grass. But does anyone have any serious observations about what they saw in that game? Yes, Alex?
Somehow they didn't get mad at all. I mean, not at all, but like barely.
Barely, right? What about Federer? Did anyone see Federer? And to Jordan's point, they're not really showing a lot of the person that loses the point up close, but you might see from the whole court's perspective. What did you notice about Federer when he was losing a point?
He doesn't lose a point.
Thank you for that contribution, Justin.
Yes,
He does,
of course, Justin.
contrary to your belief, Federer does lose some points. But when he does lose the points, what do you see?
Oh, he had like 5 set points or something like that. He didn't get upset after every one of them that he lost.
He's staying calm, cool, and
I'm like Murray.
He stayed pretty calm and cool, right? He's still in control of the match. Here's what I want us to relate to, right? We're not playing in front of these crowds yet. We're not competing in Grand Slams, right? But the biggest thing I find is it doesn't matter if it's a USTA, whatever the former level 2s or the level L1Bs, where I know this will change this year, right? But it doesn't matter what level the tournament, whether we're in match play, whether we're playing team singles in the drilling sessions that we have, right? We still get upset when we lose certain points in certain situations. So these pros are playing in front of several thousand people on the court. I think it's 11,500 on centre court, right? Millions on TV worldwide, right? And so yet they're able to generally keep their composure. So let's talk about. So there was a lack of negative body language, but what positive body language did you see from either party? Obviously Federer, it stays pretty much calm in both directions. But what did you notice about Murray when he was trying to get himself worked up?
A lot of fist pumping and yelling.
A lot of fist pumping, yelling, right? Very, very animated. What we're going to talk about today, and the reason we started off with the video is I wanted to show you what I consider to be a pretty good example of what positive body language looks like, right? It doesn't have to be, and very contrasting by the way, you don't have to be like Murray, you don't have to be fist pumping every time you win a big point. You can be like Federer, you can be cool and calm, you don't have to show your emotion when you win points or lose points. Off at a tangent, by the way, I don't know if any of you did see that match where Federer saved 7 match points recently, a couple of days ago. He was carrying an injury. He didn't look like himself. I was watching some of the match, at the time. When he faced the match points, you couldn't tell if he had the match point or if he was facing them. Right? And that's what has helped him in the past. The other guy, Tennis Sandgren, played a fantastic match, but when it got to the match points, he was tight. He was nervous. And I think anyone would be, right? In the quarterfinals of a Grand Slam, playing against Federer. But he let the occasion and the emotions get to him. Federer somehow was able to save those match points. So we've done it a little bit in reverse. What is body language when it comes down to it? Because it's not just in sports, it's in everyday life. But what is body language?
It's how you react to situations, like certain situations.
Your body language might be reflective of how you react, but that's not what body language is. What is body language? What would you say a definition of body language is?
Like how you react, like when you're moving.
Okay, so it's definitely how you might react. It's how you show your reactions, but in its definition. Does anyone want to give one more stab at it?
Like to tell someone information or something using your body instead of your mouth.
Okay, exactly. So it's non-verbal communication. You are communicating, whether you like it or not, exactly. You are communicating with someone or a group of people without saying anything. There are literally hundreds of studies on body language, not just in sports, but in the workplace, in confrontation, within leadership, right? It's a real art form perfecting body language. And it's very handy, not just on the tennis court, but also as you go on through your work career, your social life, whatever it might be. Body language plays a part in everyday life. So now we know it's communicating. Why is that important on the court? Why is it important that you have or you try and maintain positive body language in sports in general?
Because if you have negative body language, it can show your opponent that you're like upset or have a bad mindset, so they can attack without applying pressure. Yes, that would use that.
100%. That's a little bit, what we're going to discuss a little bit further down the line, is it's not just how it affects you, but it's also going to impact your opponent, for sure. That's a very, very, very important part of body language. First and foremost, right, if you have negative body language, what do you think that might do for your thoughts and your self-talk?
It might lower your confidence.
It's going to lower confidence, but it's also going to create negativity in what?
Self-talk.
In the things that you say, in the things that you think. So you see how everything starts to come together and relate. So when your first reaction is to beat yourself up and get really negative and say negative things to you, how does that affect your body language? Makes your body language worse, right? You can't say bad things to yourself and then outwardly you're like, oh, you suck, this is just so bad. You're terrible, right? It doesn't.
Every time I lose a point.
Right? But that whole thing about being really, really up with your body language, but being really negative with what you're saying, it's funny to look at because it's not natural. It doesn't happen that way. If you're negative with yourself, in terms of the things that you're saying, your body language will be negative. And if you've got negative body language, you're slumping your shoulders, you're walking like this, you can't possibly say, hey, don't worry, we'll get them next time, right? So things create, the negativity, if you have too much of it, it's going to create more negativity. So that's the whole point. When those negative thoughts pop into your head, we try and get rid of them, the thought stopping, right? Shaking your finger, whatever it might work for you. And then we're going to create more positive body language and positive self-talk. So we've talked about the negative body language reducing confidence, right?
Yeah.
When you have negative body language and you're at the back of the court and you're ready to receive serve on the next point, if your shoulders are slumped and you've just got this negativity going on, how are you going to approach that next point?
Bad.
Not well, right? But how is it going to affect you during the next point?
You might start tanking.
You might start tanking as a result, but physically, let's think about the physical ramifications, right? You're negative, you're just slouching on the baseline. How is it physically going to affect you?
I mean, if you're slouching because you're sad or mad, then you won't be able to move as well, and your posture won't be good enough to move.
Posture's not going to be good, you're not going to move as well, you're not going to have energy because you're not on your toes, you're not ready.
If you're like talking negatively to yourself, like if you talk negatively to yourself enough times, it'll like come true. Like if you say, my return is trash, my return is trash, my return is trash. After every single one of your opponent's service games, you're just gonna miss all your returns.
So it's going to, so the negative things you say are going to impact your belief, your confidence, which in turn is going to affect your body language. Right? We've talked about that. So, in other words, having this positive body language, what are some of the messages that having positive body language sends, not just to your opponent, but to yourself as well?
Well, to yourself is kind of like, well, you're not getting upset, so you're not as upset as you would be if you were like screaming at yourself and getting crying and stuff like that. But to your opponent, it would be like tell them that like you're not like giving up or anything. You're just like they're not gonna go away.
So if you're playing poorly, or if you're losing, or if you're in a situation where people expect you to react negatively, and your body language is positive instead, it sends the message to your opponent that this doesn't bother me. I'm mentally stronger than this. I'm going to turn things around. If your opponent, while we're talking about it, if your opponent sees you walking around, shoulders down, upset with yourself, negative body language, what do you think that does for them? What do you think that does for their confidence?
It raises their confidence.
So it raises their confidence, right? So you are gifting your opponent confidence. You are basically saying, look at me, I suck, I have no confidence, you might as well win the match. Right? So we've talked a little bit about it, what are some of the characteristics of negative body language? If you look at someone that has negative body language, what are some of the things that person might be doing? Yes, Des.
Maybe chucking a racket on the court.
Yeah,
Chucking a racket like across the court.
So throwing a racket, the racket itself is not the body language, but the action of throwing a racket, right, might be considered negative body language. But let's think specifically about the way you carry yourself, your body language. Like when I'm talking to you guys, if I'm talking to you and I have my hands by my side, they're raised, I'm walking around, I have high energy, versus if I'm standing still, crossing my arms, right? This is a universal sign of negativity. Sometimes you're just standing there resting, but this is body language experts would say if you cross your arms, you're very guarded as to what people are saying. So when I'm talking in front of you guys, believe it or not, I'm very conscious that I don't stand here like this. Thank you, Alicia, for demonstrating negativity. Right? But if I stand here like this, and I'm just standing here and I'm talking and I'm not really doing it, thank you, Jordan, again. You guys are awesome. Now I've told you what negativity looks like. Thank you for all doing it. Right? But if I'm standing here like this, if I stood here like this and talked about mental skills the whole time like this, what would that give you the impression of?
Literally nothing. You just look like you're standing there.
Standing there, do I care much?
It looks like you have like a piece of paper in front of you that you're just reading off of.
Sure, right? So
Like
my goal, right, this is just so I don't forget stuff, right? But I'm trying not to read it. But my goal when I talk to you guys is I move around a lot. I use my hands because I want to generate energy and positivity in here, right? So I'm doing this within mental skills. I like the fact you're trying to help me out, Jordan. I really do.
How can I help?
So what are some of the... Forget now talking about me in front of the mental skills class. On the court, what are some of the examples of negative body language?
dragging your feet, like.
But dragging your feet, so not lifting your feet up, scraping them across, right? What else?
Slouching.
Slouching, that's a great example, right? So your shoulders, they're slumping, huh?
Hitting things and yourself.
You're positive, possibly, but yes.
Screaming.
That's vocal though, right?
It's still your body.
So it all relates, right? So screaming in a negative fashion, right? But what's the difference if I win a point, or even if I lose a point, and I'm holding my racket like this, right? I'm holding my racket like this, I'm walking around like this, versus this, right?
Yeah.
My racket's down, I don't care, right? Same thing with the shouting. There can be positive shouting and there can be negative shouting. Without, by the way, without changing anything, if you just let out a scream, but it's like that, and that's negative, right? Because of the way I'm holding myself. But if your head's high and you let out a scream that's nondescript, right? That might be positive. So it's the way that you might do it that's all related. So letting out a scream doesn't have to be negative or positive, depending on how you conduct yourself. Right? But think about messages you send with your body, right? When you win a point, and when you're positive, and when things are going well for you, what do you notice about the way you move around the court? Outside of the points.
You're moving relatively like confident, and not really like paying attention to the left.
So when you win a point, and you're really feeling it, do you walk around slowly?
No, it's not like you run and pick up the balls.
Right. I've seen you run and pick up balls. When you have high energy and you're confident, you run and get balls. In between points, you're walking around, you're kind of jumping on the spot a little bit, you're looking at your strings, right? But that's great. That's all part of positive body language. So what are some of the opposites? What are some of the negative things that you might do?
Just barely walking around.
Yeah, it's just kind of like you said, scraping your feet, shoulders hunched. What about your eyes?
Trying to put off the next one.
You kind of look at the ground.
Looking at the ground, right?
The ground's very attractive.
The ground's very attractive when you're feeling negative. What about when you're projecting positive body language? Where are your eyes a lot of the time?
Looking up,
Forward, looking maybe across the other side of the net, looking at your opponent, certainly looking around, maybe making eye contact with someone that you know off the court. Okay. So guys, for some of you who do a really poor job with your body language, didn't say names, some of you need to think about this. Some of you need to think about the way you hold yourself on the court. What are some other examples about the things? Think about what you might do, right? What about, there's a couple of people in here who stand in a certain way or use their hands in a certain way when they're feeling negative. Alicia?
This might not be like body language, but like sometimes if I'm like really pissed off, I'm gonna be like skipping like the changeover. I'm just gonna like, instead of like sitting down, just walk past and go to the other side.
It's exactly
I
body
skip-
language.
I skip the changeover when I'm feeling positive. I'm like, I don't need water, just.
So hang on for a second. So this is a really good one because it can be negative and it can be positive. When you skip your changeover, I know you're angry, you're upset, and you're feeling negative. I've seen it. I've seen it firsthand. There are other people that just don't want the momentum to stop, so they skip and they just walk around the other side of the net. Right? So it can be either.
If I'm feeling negative, I go to the changeover and I like sit down and
Sure.
relax.
That's why you guys are opposite in that, but it is very relevant to your body language.
It actually helped me a little.
When you skip that changeover and you don't go through your thought process and things and you're just rushing, I don't think that it serves you particularly well. Sometimes it might help you just stop overthinking.
40 matches like that.
Right? Sure, but even a broken clock's right twice a day, right?
Yeah,
So
probably not because of that.
probably not because of that. Yes, Dennis?
So there was this one time where I was playing a match and I like lost this important game, and I got so angry that when the point was done, I sprinted to the other side and I got there before my opponent got to the bench,
Okay.
and I started smacking my feet with my racket.
Okay. So for you again, I don't think that's necessarily a positive thing, right?
Yes.
Nadal sprinting from his chair to the baseline, that is positive body language.
Yeah, like I just want to keep going. I want to keep
Sure.
playing.
No.
But that's why, like everything we talk about, everything is up to the individual. What for you is a positive sign, for Lucia is not. Okay? What about your hands? There are some people that are sitting in this room that I know. When you cover your eyes or cover your face or put your hand on your head, what is that a sign of?
Never do body language.
It's not only is it negative body language, but it's actually a universal sign of like, I want to hide my face. I can't believe how badly this is going. You win a point, you don't cover your face with your hand, do you?
I do it when I'm tired.
Yeah, so
Sure. But in terms of positive versus negative,
I don't do that now.
I've never seen anyone win a great point, be positive, and cover their eyes like this, right? That's not the way it goes. Despite some of you being experts in negative body language, it's difficult to pinpoint some of the things that we struggle with. So give me examples of what you might do, whether you're feeling it or not. Give me examples of positive body language that you could implement. Come on, ladies, you've got to have some positive body language you
I
can
got
use.
a good one for this.
Yes.
Like a fist pump.
Like a fist pump. Yes! I won that point. Alicia, what else?
Not doing any of the things that we mentioned.
So, holding yourself like this and not doing anything negative. Like being like Federer. Like being like Federer, like walking around like this. It's not particularly slowly, not particularly quickly. Certainly not, slumping. Certainly not, negative in any other way. Right? It's being kind of neutral.
Sometimes if I win a point, I'll throw my racket up and like make it flip 3 times. Yeah.
Okay,
Like,
so you're twirling your
yeah.
racket, right? That's a good example. Anything else? Anything else that you do when things are going well?
Yes.
I skip to the baseline.
Okay? Skipping, movement, jumping, anything that's high energy, basically, right? So, here's what I want us to get at today before we wrap up. Is it doesn't matter if you're losing. It doesn't matter if things are not going your way. The way that you carry yourself, and obviously what we talked about last week, the way you talk to yourself, has a huge impact on your own confidence, but also, right? Thank you for the pencil, I appreciate that. Has a huge impact on the perception of how you're feeling. What does that mean? The perception of how you're feeling.
It's like how you said you fake it till you make it. So like fake that you're.
Right, so it might involve faking it until you make it, right? But the perception is that you're being positive. Even if there's a lot of negativity, even if you're not feeling confident, if you give off positive body language, your opponent might think, wow, they're playing terribly, and they're still confident.
Just how bad my opponent is.
Right? But they might, but listen, if you see someone across the other side of the net not care or look like Federer when they're losing, in terms of not showing you any negativity, sometimes that can have a negative effect on your opponent, which is a good thing, right? Yes?
Well, I feel like showing positive body language when you lose a point
Yeah.
just shows that you're an idiot.
I'm not saying lose a point then give a fist pump, because that is the opposite of what I'm talking about, because people would interpret that as negative, because then you're being sarcastic. But I'm talking about if you lose a point, just literally looking at the string, walking around normally, getting yourself back to the baseline, jumping around. This is not a bad thing, because now we're ready for the next point. This better be good.
Yeah, so a lot of times if I lose a big point,
Yeah.
I will kind of like act neutral, but that's in my head. I'm thinking like, oh no, like I feel like if I see someone acting neutral after losing a big point, to me it seems like instead of getting mad, they've just given up. That it seems even worse than getting mad.
I think there's a distinct difference between potentially showing that you don't care versus showing you care. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have any emotion or any animation, right? But what I'm saying is this: if you miss a shot, if you miss that forehand of yours in the net, and then you go, and you show a split second of reaction of frustration, but then you switch that off, and then you get on to your negative. But if you just miss it and just walk around like you don't care,
Exactly.
I get you. I completely understand. Again, it's completely up to the individual.